The Hex Hollow Witch Murders. A quiet place with a dark name. There are places in America where history feels distant, where the past is something sealed inside books, museums, or yellow wing photographs. And then there are places where history never quite leaves. It lingers in the soil, in the trees, and in the silence between words. Hex Hollow is one of those places. Tucked into the rolling farmland of York County, Pennsylvania, Hex Hollow looks peaceful, even ordinary. A shallow valley surrounded by fields, dirt roads, and weathered farmhouses. By the early 20th century, electricity had arrived, automobiles had replaced horses, and America believed it had moved beyond the age of superstition. And yet, in 1928, in this quiet hollow, a man was murdered because others truly believed he was a witch. This is the Hex Hollow Witch Murders true story, not a legend, not folklore, but a documented event that unfolded in modern America. The story where fear overpowered reason, where belief became justification, and where the echoes of witch hunts survive far longer than anyone wanted to admit. What is Hex Hollow? Hex Hollow is not marked by signs or monuments. It does not announce itself to visitors. It is simply a low valley, a hollow, carved gently into the Pennsylvania countryside. The name Hex Hollow comes from the Pennsylvania Dutch word hex, meaning witchcraft or spell work. For generations, the area was associated with folk magic, charms, and spiritual practices brought over by German immigrants in the 18th and 19th centuries. These settlers carried with them a blend of Christianity, superstition, and folk healing traditions. Powwowing, or brockery, was common, the system of prayers, charms, and rituals used to ward off illness or misfortune. To outsiders, these practices seemed strange. To believers, they were protection. And to some, they were dangerous. A world where belief still had power. By the 1920s, America liked to think it had outgrown witch hunts. The Salem trials were taught as historical mistakes. Science had replaced superstition. Doctors replaced healers. But rural communities moved at a different pace. In isolated farming regions, illness was still mysterious. Mental health was poorly understood. Chronic pain, infections, and psychological distress were often interpreted through spiritual lenses. If someone fell ill without explanation, the cause was not always bacteria or trauma. Sometimes, the cause was believed to be a curse. This belief did not feel irrational to those who held it. It was inherited, reinforced, and shared quietly among neighbors. And in Hex Hollow, that belief would soon turn fatal. Nelson Rehmeyer, the accused. Nelson Rehmeyer was not an outsider. He was a farmer, a neighbor, a man known within the community. He owned books, something unusual for the time, including volumes on folk magic and spellcraft. He practiced powwowing. People sought him out for cures, charms, and spiritual guidance. To some, Rehmeyer was a healer. To others, he was something far more dangerous. When misfortune struck, his name surfaced in whispers. When sickness lingered, suspicion followed. And when fear grew strong enough, whispers became certainty. Jacob Hummel and the search for a cure. Jacob Hummel was a farmer who believed he had been cursed. He suffered from illness, weakness, and strange sensations he could not explain. Doctors offered no solution. Medicine failed him. So he turned to belief. Hummel became convinced that Nelson Rehmeyer had placed a hex upon him. That his suffering was not physical, but spiritual. In this belief system, curses required removal. and removal required confrontation. Hummel sought help from others who shared his fear, and together, they decided to confront the man they believed was responsible. The plan forms. On November 27, 1928, Jacob Hummel did not go alone. He brought with him two men, John Rehmeyer and Raymond Myers. Their goal, at least in their own minds, was not murder. They intended to force Rehmeyer to remove the curse, to make him undo the spell they believed he had cast. They armed themselves, not with firearms, but with blunt force. The night at the farmhouse. Nelson Rehmeyer was alone in his farmhouse when the men arrived. The night was quiet, the kind of rural silence that absorbs sound. No witnesses. No interruption. They demanded he lift the hex. Rehmeyer refused. Whether he believed in their fear or not no longer mattered. The argument escalated. And then, violence replaced words. Rehmeyer was beaten, strangled, killed. In the farmhouse, belief crossed the line that could never be undone. An attempt to erase the crime. After the murder, panic set in. The men attempted to destroy evidence. They tried to burn Rehmeyer's body inside the farmhouse stove. It failed. The body would not disappear. Fear, once again, guided their actions. They fled. Discovery. The crime was discovered quickly. Authorities found Rehmeyer's body. The signs of violence were unmistakable. This was not an accident. This was murder. And soon, the killers were identified. What shocked investigators was not just the brutality, but the motive. The suspects confessed. They believed they were killing a witch. The trial that shocked America. The case drew national attention. Newspapers struggled to explain how, in 1928 America, a man could be murdered over witchcraft. The defense centered on belief. The accused did not deny the killing. They insisted it was necessary. The court did not agree. They were convicted. Justice, at least by law, was served. But the question lingered. How did this happen? Why the Hex Hollow witch murders true story still matters. The Hex Hollow witch murders true story is unsettling because it is not ancient history. It reminds us that belief does not disappear simply because society advances. Fear does not require darkness. It only requires conviction. The Hollow today. Hex Hollow still exists. The land remains quiet. There are no warnings. No markers. Only a name. And a story. Final reflection. When fear becomes permission. The most frightening part of the Hex Hollow witch murders true story is not the superstition. It is how ordinary the people were. Fear convinced them they were right. Belief gave them permission. And history recorded the result. Some stories end. Others remain. Waiting. In the hollow.